Hey, welcome back, Warrior Poets. This is about America's forgotten war. I hear General Mattis and just how he's dealing with radical Islamic powers in the Middle East and elsewhere. And to many, it looks very, very aggressive, not very diplomatic. And I would say, if anybody wants to understand any type of enemy, the best way to understand how to perform and act in the future is usually by looking at the past. It's all there. It's really frustrating to a student of history when folks are echoing the sentiments of diplomacy, which I'm all for. I'd far rather work it out than pay for waging some type of conflict that amounts to more American lives. I don't like war. I'd rather avoid war. I exist because the war can become a necessity. That's why the military exists. Police exist because they're required to exist. It's not trying to oppress. It's not the man trying to keep you down. It could become that. But the idea of a police force or a military is usually necessary because evil men exist, right? That I probably shouldn't have gone all the way, and now the comments are just going to be flooded with all your political philosophies, and I may be in error, sure, but that's just how I see it. Roger, let me get into America's forgotten war. In the turn of the 19th century, so about 1800, the fledgling United States had just become a nation, just finished with the Revolutionary War, just naming our first president, and already a extremely broke new fledgling nation that is inundated with war debt is somehow got to boost the American economy so that we can even survive. Americans are very broke at this point, and the federal government is very tiny and very, very poor. Something like creating a navy. We didn't have a navy. We didn't have money to make a navy. And the reason why we ended up creating one is necessity forced us to. Trade was being embarked so that the American economy could be stimulated. We're doing transatlantic voyages to trade with many European nations. However, every time we put some type of ship of trade that's going to come back and boost American economy and help us climb out of debt, a bunch of radical Islamic pirates, and these are from the Barbary states. This would be Tripoli, Algiers, the Tunis. They would raid American ships, capture the ships, employ them as warships against us, and then enslave the Americans. The way the European powers all dealt with this, they'd all just pay them off. And these bashaws and days would exact incredible bribes. Like they're going to ask for a ransom that's somewhat similar to the entire annual GDP for the United States. So obviously there's no way we could pay for it. And the conditions where some of these people would be slaves for over a decade doing just heartbreaking, backbreaking slave labor. If you ever want a fascinating read to discover who the most brutal enslavers of all human history are, a lot of the radical Islamic nations would be pretty much first off. You could argue the Roman Empire, you could argue some of the Greeks, you could argue the Persians, you can argue, and slavery was much part of the history of the world. It's not like the United States invented it with the slave trade that you knew about during the 1800s, and not even close. That was a drop in the bucket compared to the slave trade. And it's not to excuse the American slave trade, which was reprehensible, but I'm just saying in the contrast of the world, the history of slavery, it was a little tiny drop in the bucket. So anyway, these Barbary nations are harassing the ships, taking slaves, and we were forced with a difficult position of trying to make peace, trying to have diplomatic missions where we can get our people back. We don't want to go to war. We can't even afford a war, but we certainly can't afford to pay you off. A lot of the United States policies regarding we do not negotiate with terrorists will come out of these early years around the early 1800s. We couldn't afford to. And the more you paid them off, the more they would demand. And you'd get broker and broker, and they'd get stronger and stronger and keep making bigger and bigger demands. And so it made this impossible cycle. And the only way they found early on is diplomacy wasn't working with these folks. They wanted peace on their own terms, and they made those terms nearly impossible. Thomas Jefferson was president at the time, and many would call him the pacifist president because his reluctance to go to war. He didn't want to fight. But in a letter to James Madison, I've got the quote right here, he says, I know that nothing will stop the eternal increase of demand from these pirates but the presence of an armed force. Coming from Jefferson, these were bold words. And this is America's forgotten war because I think it's politically incorrect to even bring up this topic. But this is just near and dear to our history. This could have literally cut the United States off, or we wouldn't have actually formed into a nation. So it's what happened in these years that would build what we are as a nation. A lot of proud heritage comes out of this. There's some really amazing warrior poets that came out of this. Stephen Decatur, William Eaton, there's a whole host of others, but I wanted to center on those two. And I also want to give a shout out to the Marine Corps. We have a fledgling Navy at this point. We have a fledgling Marine Corps. We're fledgling kind of everything. But the Marine Corps, there's the very small group of Marines led by William Eaton would end up mounting just this impossible land attack, a naval and land attack that's simultaneously going to come together to really force this thing to a head. And so just the courage of this, and even the Marine Corps anthem, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we'll fight our nation's battle on air and land and sea. To the shores of Tripoli. So even just the DNA of the Marine Corps, their proud heritage comes out of this. And they did so well, just kind of as I'm reading this history, all I could think is, you know what, Semper Fi, Marine Corps. From this Army Ranger to you Marine Corps, good job. So if you know a Marine, share it with this so that they can get a good shout out. That should be fun for them. But man, Marines really were instrumental in winning this war, as well as the U.S. Navy, of course. So anyway, I wanted to center in on these warrior poets. They were bold, brilliant, resourceful men of action, and I loved the history I read that this particular book, this is, let's see, Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates, the Forgotten War That Changed American History. So there it is. Picked it up on a date me and my wife were having in Beaufort. Just bought it for a few bucks and just finished reading it. Lots of footnotes, really good history. And I could tell, you can always tell you're reading good history when it's saying stuff that puts the home team you're cheering for in a good light and in a bad light. So that's part of it. Like I remember reading a biography on a Christian missionary years ago. Hudson Taylor did some great work in the 1800s in missionary work. And this particular bio, I hated this bio because it was like, he was just this reincarnate Jesus, this perfect dude who never did anything wrong. And I'm like, dude, come on, give me the real skinny, the good, the bad, the ugly. Give me all that stuff. But it's kind of like Hudson Taylor once had a bad thought, but then he prayed to God and he never had a bad thought again, kind of thing. I'm like, shut up. Give me something real. Give me the dirt. Let me know I'm reading real history. And so a lot of the just encounters, they had some really embarrassing defeats. Some real, just stupid, very avoidable setbacks that would happen, as well as some very daring plans that would sometimes work out and sometimes wouldn't. And that's really just kind of real life. And so I appreciated the history, and I trust this is a good historical book, not just because it had some pretty copious notes and referencing some more prestigious people that in the historical world, but just you can even see those embarrassing things happening. You're like, this is good history. That may have been a rant, but I want to help you guys along as you're just trying to find what is good history and how do I know it when I see it, so that I'm not just trying to be biased and prejudiced. Everyone's with bias, but we're just trying to minimize that. Now to the warrior poets. Stephen Decatur, he had this just bravery that people would say bordered on absolute recklessness. He was responsible for a nighttime raid when the Philadelphia, one of our very, very few frigates that the nation had put in to the United States Navy, went captured. I think it was by Tripoli. They made this daring nighttime raid. So it was kind of a SEAL-ish endeavor in that. And he had some other really daring type things where he's leading naval battles and he's way up front and he blows some ships to smithereens, and then he gets close enough to board and takes on a force of comparable size, cuts them to ribbons, gets in this epic duel hand-to-hand fight with this huge jacked up Islamic pirate and ends up winning. Then the other warrior poet I wanted to mention was William Eaton. Real impressive guy, very, very resourceful. He had the appearance of like a Roman general. Too, to his credit, which is cool to his troops and people following along. He was known to be real tough. He was very educated, and he was really responsible for putting himself through a lot of that education as well. As he's working just so he can, get his education. He studies classical languages. These guys are smart, brilliant men, bold, and men of action, which is what I like. William E. Eaton is going to be really responsible for closing this First Barbary War, and he'll go on to fight in the War of 1812. He'll also go into the Second Barbary War and serve with distinction. But both of these guys, both Decatur and Eaton, would be American war hero legends kind of people. I've heard of like Eaton College and Decatur, Georgia. All those are from these dudes as well. So anyway, Eaton was impressive because he decides, okay, not only with a naval assault, let's go ahead and put in on land. I'll gather an army, just build it up of Greeks, Arabs, mercenaries, a handful, just a tiny handful of his Marines and a bunch of Arabs, and he's going to build this army to a force that he's going to go march on the city of Derne and overthrow it. It's like an outrageous plan. Like this is kind of like Hail Mary time. And anyway, they pull it off, and he's going to charge charge the forces with a small group of Marines as well. And he's not going to get hit once, but when he pulls his robes out after the battle, he's got like 5 bullet holes in. Really just impressive what is going to come about. And really, the force that was displayed, both in our naval might, which was a little bit underwhelming and was kind of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, but mixed with our land assault, mainly of Eaton and some of the daring of Decatur, all of a sudden the Islamic powers that would say, Americans are a force that should not be played with. These guys can do some serious damage. So then all of a sudden they're not demanding these anymore. And in the years to come, some of these guys like Decatur is going to go back and demand all these ransoms back. And so it's really, really cool as you see us coming into our own and understanding how to deal with radical Islam. The only thing that they understand and respect is force. And I don't like that. Yay for diplomacy. But we've done diplomacy for hundreds of years and it hasn't worked. And really, you can look back in the history from the 7th century. Diplomacy doesn't work. They understand and respect force. And that may be very politically incorrect. But history is not politically correct, and neither am I. Warrior poets, train hard, train smart, and read. Study. Without a knowledge of history, we're doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. See you guys.